marginal cost of people, or it can be factored into the two parts. I have the expected marginal cost of people, and then I have the expected marginal utility of the marginal consumers. And those two terms, that just gives me from here the exact same thing I had from before. So the only real change is in my cost function, which is it now gets broken into this direct cost, right? And possibly offset by the fact that if I have higher quality things, that may actually lower the cost of those inframarginal people, right? So for example, if I make the product higher quality, I might get people reading the newspaper in more detail, therefore get higher advertising rates. Or I might have more loyal customers who will come back and buy my product again, as we were talking about earlier. OK. So this is along the intensive margin, but there's also an important effect along the extensive margin, which is that customers with different value to the firm may be attracted differentially by different product characteristics. And so one way we can model that is we can have that people's cost now depends on their type directly, that there are customers of different costs. So in that case, changing my instrument both affects, as we discussed before, this intensive thing. But here, things are a little bit more complicated. Now we have the marginal utility times the average of the marginal utility multiplied by the cost. Now before I could just separate those two out, because all the people who were on the margin had the same cost because they had the same utility. But now if people on the margin have different costs, different people will be attracted by changing my non-price instrument, right? Now when we hold fixed the number of people, right, we raise the price by the average marginal utility of the marginal people, right, multiplied by the cost that those people have on average. So, sorry, there should be a negative sign here. We should have the number of marginal people times the difference between the average marginal utility multiplied by cost and the product of the average marginal utility and the average marginal cost, right? Now, you guys may recall, or if you haven't taken econometrics yet or statistics yet, I'm going to tell you that the difference between the average of a product and the product of the averages is called the covariance. That's like a measure of how much things move together. And so this difference up here becomes the number of people on the margin times the covariance between people's marginal utility and their cost. That's a measure of how much changing this non-price instrument sorts for people who are costly, right? If there's a positive covariance, the people who have a higher marginal utility are also the most costly people, right? So that's the key effect that comes out of my work with Andre. And it was recently applied in this work by Laurent Aynov and co-authors. And they try to look at both of the effects that changing non-price instruments have on the value that you get per customer that you attract. So, could you just repeat what are those two effects that changing the non-price instruments have on the value that you get per customer? The two effects we talked about.
The intensive and the extensive.
And just remind us of what those were.
So the extensive effect is about the marginal customers and how their utility is changed into characteristics.
Well, how they get sorted, right? Which types of marginal customers you attract, right, versus the other ones, right? So that was the sorting effect, right? And what was the other? What was the intensive effect?
So the people already buying.
Yep. No, well, it's that they'll buy more or they'll participate more in the product. They'll read the paper more carefully, right? So those are the two effects that affect how much profit you get per customer, right, that you've already attracted, holding fixed the price, right? And that's exactly what Aynov and his co-authors were looking at. So a good example of this was subprime auto loans. They were thinking, here you've got an auto. You're going to sell it for a certain price, right? But certain non-price characteristics can affect what's the chance that someone's actually going to pay back that loan, right? And that's going to affect the profit that you make for every customer. So that's separate from the price you're charging and separate from the quantity that you're selling. It's about how much you get out of a customer given you already made the sale to them, right? And there's two different, and some of these non-price product characteristics are the down payment that you force people to make or the interest rate you charge them, right? And one way you can try to sort out good from bad consumers is based on their credit scores. But there are also some hidden risks that you can't see in their credit scores. And changing the down payment might affect the likelihood of people repaying in two ways. Jing, can you think about what those two ways are related to the two effects we talked about, the intensive effect and the sorting effect?
Maybe for this intensive effect, if they... can you explain to me what is down payment?
OK, sorry. Down payment is how much you're forced to put up front rather than get in loan.
Oh, so you're required to pay like in advance amount of money.
Yeah.
So for the intensive,
So how might a down payment affect the likelihood of default of people who are already buying the product? And how might a down payment affect which customers are attracted?
For the people who already bought all the products, the down payment will, since they already charged them this upfront payment, they will be less likely to exit the market.
Yeah, they'll be less likely to default because they don't have as much money that they owe you, and therefore it's easier for them to repay you, right?
Yeah, but for the expensive markets, it may not encourage that many people to get into buy your products because it's an upfront payment. That's
right, but it might sort them. Jacob,
who's getting your mortgages?
Yeah.
Because now someone who doesn't really have enough money to securely be able to pay you back might be able to afford the lower down payment, or vice versa.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the sorting effect, right? That people who can afford to make a down payment are often more financially secure than people who can't afford to make a down payment, right? And those are two effects that Einov and his co-authors measured, because what they found is that if you change the down payment, you get people who are more likely to repay for both of these two reasons. So here is a graph of what they did. They found that as you increase the minimum down payment, the probability that you get to sell goes down. And you're not, in theory, getting any more money by changing that down payment. So why would you ever do that? Well, the reason is that the probability of people defaulting falls. And so your expected profit can actually rise over quite a range. And they found that the optimal down payment was about this level, because they found that they took cases when the firms experimented with this. Anyways, we're out of time. But we'll talk about price discrimination on Tuesday. And thanks guys.